Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Stumptown. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I like that this episode is kind of pretty meta. We actually think about the fact that it matters. You have Dex going to Hollywood because of the case and everything, but not knowing anything about Hollywood. Obviously, that being a thing just because, Kobe Smulders is actually, an actress and stuff like that. So it's just, obviously, like I said, it's just interesting. And I did find it interesting that Gray's the one that kind of explains how things kind of work in Hollywood, and it's just because he dated an actress. He brings up the fact that I wonder if was she just an extra, or had she ever gotten in anything. He never really got into that, but it was interesting because obviously Dex had this case, and obviously it seemed like she had her particular reasons why she didn't want to go Hollywood in particular, or Los Angeles in particular, and we kind of find out it's kind of stuff associated with her family because she has this letter and stuff like that, and it's like, what's that about, and she kind of gets a little dodgy about it. It also seems like Gray's got a reason to go too, because he wants to pick up this car from his childhood, and it's like, oh yeah, it was something his dad had, which, you have Dex being like, you hated your dad. He was like, yeah, but I love that car. So it's like, all right. So they end up, going to LA together for this case, because this woman named Camille, she wrote a script that was based on her uncle or something, his life about being a good cop in a corrupt system or whatever and she wrote the story. She gave it to a dude named Jim Force, but his real name is Chuck or something like that. Was his real name Chuck? That'd be interesting if it really was Chuck. I'm just thinking about that. It wasn't Chuck, was it? I'm pissed that I can't remember, because it's the actor who played Metatron from Supernatural, and it was like, if his real name was Chuck, I'm like, that has to be a little on purpose. Maybe it wasn't, but it's just, I think it's funny if his name was Chuck, just because obviously, Supernatural, God's name is Chuck. It's a whole thing. But nevertheless, and obviously she wants credit for this, because for her, she's like, she doesn't have any children. So for her, just being able to see her name written on a movie that's on a 30-foot screen, to her, that just kind of, it kind of shows that, hey, I was here, that I matter. Because otherwise it's like, if I died tomorrow and no one would know, this type of situation. So she wants to kind of, have some meaning to her life, even if it was just this one thing to be like, oh my God, I wrote a script that got turned into a Hollywood movie, So, and obviously, Dex goes to visit the dude Jim, but she's kind of able to kind of dodge around the questions, because he's like, you're really invested in my script, and she's like, well, because this and that. So she was able to kind of get around it. But I love that Gray was able to basically hook her up on, because he's like, oh yeah, talk to this particular person, $50, they'll get you as an extra on any set. And she gets on the set. It's interesting because the dude who's playing the lead actor in the show, I've seen him in plenty of stuff too, but I'm just blanking on his name. It's actually kind of sad, because it's for Dex, it's oh my God, you were in that movie 9 years ago. Me and my brother love it, but for him, he's an actor who's going through some struggles and stuff like that. That's why I'm this episode's kind of really, I guess it's kind of a real look into Hollywood and stuff like that. But for that dude, it's he's so desperate, because this is an opportunity for people to look at him differently. And Dex doesn't really go into it, but I think there is some level of, I think Dex could, sympathize with that, just because, because she kind of has gone through her own struggles as well. So, seeing someone else who's going through it, it's no, I think she 100% wasn't trying to judge him or something like that. Wasn't trying to, bring up any, because he was yeah, you could see me all over the tabloids and stuff like that. So, he kind of took it as kind of an insult, and he's like, no, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have kind of blown off the handle like that. But it's just because for him, this is his way to get people to kind of finally look at him a little differently. But I think, Dex can completely understand kind of wanting to shift your life around and everything, so. It was pretty funny seeing her actually as an extra on set. I'm like, are you actually going to end up being in this movie? But with the way things kind of play in the episode, I'm skipping around, but I'm like, yeah, your stuff probably most likely got cut out. No, they could fudge it and keep your stuff in there, but that'd just be funny. I just think it's kind of interesting. I didn't expect her to be able to steal the script so easily. I thought there'd be more shenanigans involved. There were shenanigans involved being an extra in the movie and everything, but it's no, she got away with it pretty seamlessly. So I was like, oh, that was easy. And so talks to Camille, and then she talks to Jim and the producer, and it's yeah, Camille's got these terms about it, and it's he's that fact is, Jim, it's the fact of the matter is I haven't been able to get in a room about a movie and stuff like that in a year, and this is finally my chance. I'm so close, and you're taking this from me. And Dex is you mean this, you mean getting in the rooms with the story that you stole from someone else? I even love that little thing earlier about, he's oh, I don't want anyone to steal the script, and she's it's a true story, so won't people already know the ending? Which is I'm sure that's kind of the same thing. I think that's probably a little wink and nod to people probably being pissed sometimes with like, what, you spoiled a story that's based on a true story. It's like, you can always look up the events, but it's still kind of the journey of a movie, especially if you don't know the real life events, which obviously kind of is no excuse now because you literally have a small computer at your disposal more often, so that's a whole thing. But I just think that's kind of it. Like, because that does come up, I think, sometimes when some people are like, oh, like this movie is predictable or something. Like, this movie's based on a true story, so it's okay for it to be predictable because they're literally following a story. Like, it's a whole thing. So it's just funny to me sometimes. But regardless, so it's like, oh, everything kind of works out, and that ended. I was like, oh, that's not going to end well. And then lo and behold, someone basically throws a firebomb in the place that they're staying. Did we ever find out like who? I guess they were just renting the place or whatever. But that was interesting. And I like how Gray ended up basically, he got on set, hired as an extra. He walked around basically like spreading rumors like, oh yeah, did you hear about that PI who stole the script? Like someone threw a fireball and was spreading the news amongst all, because he knows like, it's like, a set. There's plenty of gossip going around because Dex had already heard that about like, oh yeah, like, did you know, like there's wings available, like don't let anyone know, so it's like there's gossip on set. So, and I love, and the guy was about to shave, he's like, whoa, you're about to shave me? He's like, yeah, cops in the 50s didn't have beard. He's like, I can't do that. Yeah, I'm fired. Thanks, and walks away. And it's like, I love that. That's as far as Gray was willing to go. It's like, I kind of spread the word enough. I'm just gonna quit. I don't no shaving my beard. So I love that. It is sad. I wasn't expecting it to be the lead actor. I was like, oh, but like it's because, and it was this interesting moment, kind of more, stuff between him and Dex, where it's like he's like, you don't know what this means to me, because he's so desperate to keep this role because it's his opportunity, because he's like, you don't know what it's like to have someone love you one minute and then just have it all go in the next, which obviously Dex does because we're family. That's going to be a whole thing we're going to get into soon enough, but he was so desperate to kind of get, people to kind of look at him like that again, love him again, that he was going through all this, admit that much to him. But, Dex was like, you're not a killer. And, the cops show up and she takes the gun from him. It ended up being a prop gun, but she's like, we're not going to tell them about that because it would have added more charges to it. But it's like, it's kind of a bummer because even Dex is like, I kind of feel bad for the guy because it's like he wanted this position and stuff like that. He was so desperate, just to, be in the limelight again, to kind of have that, because he was like he didn't want like his mugshot to be the last thing people had the image of him. He wanted it to kind of be in a more positive light. So it's like, it's actually sad thing in the end. Because I mean, at the end of the day, no one got hurt. I mean, granted, he still threw a firebomb at them. He could have killed, Dex or Gray, but it's still the thing of like, it sucks because it's just, it's a sad end. And it's even something that kind of correlates with the thing that Gray had said, where it's like, oh, he didn't like the script especially the ending, because he was like, there was just so much convenience in the story, but also at the end, it had a perfect ending. It's like, there's no such thing as like a perfect ending. That's not the Hollywood ending. Like, things are rarely that perfectly tied up in a knot, everything being okay. And that kind of is very reflective in this ending. So that was one side of things. Another side of this thing is probably the real, like, really, to me, the most interesting. I like the case, but like, to me, the most interesting stuff is like Gray and Dex's situation, because both of them, interesting enough, it is like fate kind of brought them together, because obviously we learned like, all right, why Dex is avoiding LA was because this is the last place she got in contact with her aunt, Maribel. She's her mom's sister, and maybe tracking her down could be a clue to tracking down her parents. But Maribel kind of disappeared, so it's like she knows like getting like, it's like she's trying to understand like why they left in general. And obviously she was kind of reluctant to do all this, but for Gray, it's like, the fact of the matter is you deserve closure, whether it's the answer whether it's, because it's like, what is not the answer I want. It's like, at the end of the day, you deserve the closure after all this. So, but at the same time, Gray, he's here to pick up the car, and he looks at it and it's got the stain, and he's like, did you stain this? He's like, no, it was already like that. And it's like, Gray realizes the car that he's picking up that looks exactly like his dad is exactly his dad's car. So that means his dad's here. And obviously, it's so interesting because like Dex is telling him to kind of confront his past, but he's like, she's like, you're telling me to confront my past. Gray's like, yeah, it's a different situation. It's your family. It is interesting because Dex is kind of like shifting the board to try and be like, we're going to not focus on my stuff. Let's focus on yours. And he's like, fine, I'll go see my dad if you go see Maribel. And she was like, fine, but you go first. He's like, why do I have to go first? And she's like, well, I've got prior obligations. So it was interesting. Also, the actor who plays his dad, I've seen his that actor in so much stuff, but I feel like there's something fairly recently I saw his dad in, the actor who plays his dad in this, but regardless, the moment he opens, like, the moment he goes up there and it's like a little boy, I'm like, his dad started a new family. Because we don't really get 100% the ins and out about Gray's family. We get this little line about, he's like, oh, have you talked to your mom? And it's kind of like, no. And she's like, oh, she's married. So I don't know whether they interpret that as like Gray kind of lost contact with his mom, or whether they just haven't. It seems like, I'm wondering, because I'm kind of interpreting it made it seem like his mom left when he was young, when he was still living with his dad, so it was just him and his dad, but then his dad kind of up and left him too. But it was just so interesting because he brought up the whole, oh yeah, your mom, she married a guy that was into some particular business. I forgot what he referenced her new husband does, but regardless, it was a situation of like, it's just so interesting because it seems like Gray probably has issues with both of his parents, but like his whole mom situation didn't get brought up. Man, I wonder had he brought up the whole situation about kind of hating his dad before, or was it? I wonder was this the first episode of reference? There might have been one in previously that brought it up, but I don't remember. But what was interesting is obviously it's like, because Gray was like, I actually kind of expected to find you kind of in like a dump or something. Like, the fact of the matter is, I thought everything would have caught up with you, but it turns out like he was a drinker and stuff like that, so he wasn't the best father. But now it kind of pisses Gray off a little bit because he looks around, it's like you're in a nice home, you have a happy, nice family, and it's like your other son never got to know the side of you that I did, that you were kind of a mess. But it's also interesting because he introduces like, this is Gray, which is like, that is interesting. So you haven't shied away from the fact is that you have a son out there. So I guess his son and his new wife know who Gray is. There was no questions. They're like, oh, it's nice to meet you. But Gray also points out the fact is he looks around the house, is like, there's not a single picture of me. It's almost like I don't exist. He's like, I don't have any pictures of you. And Gray gives him the one picture he has, because it was a good memory. It was a great day, sure, but one great day doesn't take away from all the complicated stuff. Because for Gray, it's like, because his dad was like, you told me to go away. He's like, the fact of the matter is, I was 16 years old. I was mad. You left for 20 years. You never reached out to me. It's like, you were the adult. You're the one that's supposed to repair the relationship, but you didn't. You left because, and it didn't go into this, but for his dad, it was easier rather than, fixing what was broken, and once again, it has to suck for Gray because it's like, you went off and got better for someone else. You couldn't do it for me. You went off and you got better for someone else. And you stayed better for a different son, not even for me. Like, so that's the kind of middle finger. And for Gray, that's what pisses him off. Because even more so, because knowing who his dad was, he was afraid, like, hey, that means I'm destined to kind of, it's kind of that thing of kind of like, you're kind of almost like a reflection of your parents. And he thought maybe the same thing in his case. It's like, maybe I'm a reflection of my dad. So he thought, hey, maybe I'm bound to end up like my dad. But now he sees like, I think it's just, there's give and take with like, it's good to know, hey, my dad doesn't end up being a hot mess. So maybe there's hope for me that I don't have to repeat that future. But at the same time, it's still just kind of irks your nerves. He was talking about like, maybe we can start fresh, but I'm wondering, will they, Well, he got the closure he needed, so it was worth it. Yet at the same time, I think in the end of the day, it is worth it. But I'm curious, is he going to try and have a relationship with his dad or his, half brother? Like, I'm curious about that. You got family out there, because even for Gray, he also blames his dad because it's like, I did everything that you taught me and it landed me in jail, so it's like, obviously, once again, it's like, he's like, I wasn't a perfect father and everything. So it's like, I don't know. I'm curious to see where things kind of go on that front. Then the whole situation with Dex was really interesting because she goes to finally meet her aunt. But it seems like her aunt, might have dementia or something. She's older. And so the moment she sits down with Dex, it's like, oh, you haven't changed a bit. The moment she said that, I was like, she thinks you're your mom. And then like she was like, oh yeah, mom and dad, they died in the 80s and stuff like that. And it's like, right. Yep. And it confirmed, it's like, yeah, she looks at you and she sees your mom. But then, like, she brings up this interesting conversation where she was like, yeah, Ansel, it was basically, because it seems like her memories are basically stuck about 5 years ago when they ended up leaving, because she ends up talking about the fact is that, like, oh, yeah, like, when Dex gets back, she's going to be so pissed at you for leaving Ansel. But, but Dex is asking, like, why did I leave? And it's like, you know why you left. You and David left because you were scared. You were, in the sense that, like, you were like, we will have to leave and we can never come back. And the moment that was said, I was like, they didn't leave because they were just like, oh, we're going to up and abandon you. They left you to protect you. Something or someone is after them for whatever reason. And to keep their family safe, they're like, we'll leave Ansel there. We know that Dex will come back and keep him safe. But the fact of the matter is we can't bring him in. We can't let Dex know where we are because, you know, they probably thought like Dex would try to do something. It's like, we don't want to get our children mixed up in this. I think they're on the run from somebody. Or like I said, or something. That's what that's inkling setting up for me. I mean, because Dex, you know, it was actually this really sweet moment between Dex and Gray. You know, it's like, you know, because Gray, you know, got some benefit out of this situation. But Gray was also like, she did too. You know, you got some answers out of this as well. And she's like, what? It's like, now you know that before you never knew if you were brave enough to look for your parents. You now know you are. You know, so the question is, because she had brought it up, the reason why she started thinking about this is because Ansel had started asking a lot more questions about their parents. So... I mean, I'm curious to see if she ends up looking into this more just because her Aunt Maribel had brought that whole thing up. So, at the very least, it kind of brings her more in contact with some of her family. Like, Maribel might not be, you know, in the best condition mentally, but to know your family's still out there and to know she's out there as family as well. So that's probably also why she hasn't gotten contact with Dex in the past couple of years because of her condition or whatever. So, you know, I think that's kind of a nice step in this direction of figuring out, like, what that all is. At the same time, we deal with the whole situation of Tuki and Ansel. More so Tuki is running, it was an event. Grace explicitly told him, hey, don't have an event at my place. It's not cool. Like, we don't need that right now. But Suki decided to take advantage of it, goes to Miles, handing him some food. And I love Hoffman being like, oh, this is actually really good. But he's trying to, like, throw a birthday party for his mom, like, to get a venue and stuff like that, because it's a way to kind of mend fences, because he's got a complicated situation with, obviously, you know, last episode, the complicated situation with him and his dad. So he wants to kind of make things better, you know, make things a little easier on his mom, because his mom acts as peacekeeper with the whole situation. So... which it was interesting because Tuki immediately could kind of figure out, which I'm wondering, like, has Tuki been through that himself? Like, the reason why he knows that? Whatever the case may be. But Miles is kind of reluctant at first because Tuki is like, no, it's cool. Yeah, like, let's just not tell Gray about it. He's like, fist bump, and Miles just kind of looks at him like, yeah. But nevertheless, it does come through at the end. Tuki, you know, has the event and everything, and it's very celebratory. I love that Miles is talking to, like, because, like, the entertainment showed up, and it's like, the fact is, he might actually be a wino, and his cousin is like, yeah, I might be too much of a haggler. They might have sent me to the B team, essentially. And I love how dude gets on the table, and he's about to sing a song, and he's trying to play it, and he's like, it's not working, and then he, like, falls on his ass off the table, and he's like, is it playing? It's like, I mean, that was entertaining in its own way, complicated entertainment, but yeah, I mean, what was also interesting, though, because of that party, we got to meet Tuki's wife, and it was interesting. It's like, oh yeah, but then it's like, he was basically like, oh, kind of where you go? She's like, oh, I got this, and I'm like, it was just a little bit of an episode. It was literally like, what, she was in the scene for like, what, a minute? But it's like, they were setting up some stuff like, oh, that might be some complicated stuff. Like, it's like basically almost like, where are you going? Like, kind of all dressed up. She's like, oh, it's kind of the only thing. And it's like, oh, please don't tell me they're setting that story up to be like, she's having an affair. Or maybe it's going to turn into a thing of Tuki suspects that she's having an affair, but it ends up being something else. That's why I'm like, oh, it seems like there's a complication. Because it's interesting, because I think last episode was the first time Tuki had ever brought her up, and it just turns out now it's like, oh, she's in to see her pop up now too. That was like, oh, because at first when it was my Hoffman's cousin, I thought that was I was like, oh, are we getting to meet your brother? Because we found out about your brother, like you mentioned your brother last episode, and now it's like we get to meet. It was like, no, it was his cousin. Could have been his brother there too, or maybe that's a whole thing in itself. But I just thought that was interesting. Luckily, the party worked out. They came out heavily in profits, but it turns out Gray's gun from his office is gone, which I love that it was a focus of a thing last episode. Now we're like, oh, that thing that they made a gag out of it. Yeah, it's gone. It's like Tuki's like flipping out because he's like, wait, what? And it's like Ansel being like, dude, we're dead. And Tuki goes to Miles about it, and Miles is like, whoa, I'm trying to mend fences with my family, throwing out accusations to somebody, stealing something not good. Tuki's like, yeah, I get it, but I don't want to cause some problems either, but the fact of the matter is, but he calls Gray later on in the episode, and it's like, yeah, someone took the gun. It's like, no, I put it in my safe because I knew you were going to have a party. And what's this about, a wino? See you when you get back there. He's like, yeah, we're going to have a conversation about that. And the way that he was looking at Hoffman like, woo, it worked out, but Hoffman was kind of pissed. I'm like, Miles ended up asking around his family beforehand, didn't he? And it caused some issues, and now it's like, oh, it was kind of all for nothing, so it kind of probably undoes the goodwill that was kind of presented by the party and stuff like that. So I just thought that was kind of a neat little side aspect of the episode, but like I said, a lot of interesting stuff that I'm curious to kind of see where all that kind of, especially like the Dex and Gray stuff, like where that takes us going forward into the next episode. Do note that there isn't an episode next week, but there will be one the week after next on March 4th. So do keep that in mind. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.